definitely true that luxury customers are somehow different compared to any other customer. But my point is that these customers that clearly are searching for special experiences, that are clearly very much into exclusivity, that are looking for highly symbolic goods, are at the same time daily embedded into a world where they are doing their grocery shopping on Amazon, they are downloading and they are streaming their own music actually on Spotify, they are jumping on Netflix daily to decide on demand which videos that they want to watch. So it's true that luxury customers are different, but it's also true that they are daily embedded into a context that is deeply changing and where digital technologies are really reshaping the way we are consuming most part of the products and the way we are getting used to have a more on-demand access to any kind of product or service. So this clearly is also reflecting in the kind of expectation that luxury customers have from their own favorite brands. And what is somehow the very clear direction is that it's tougher and tougher to find some fashion and luxury purchases that are not at least influenced by the search of information and the initial feedback that you can get from peers and from the same brands directly in online environments. So what we have discovered is that one of the most common behaviors today is to at least go online for looking, in order to look for information and get feedback that are going to shape your further behavior, your decision of purchase in the physical environment. So we have today in the luxury field, statistics say 8 out of 10 purchases that are influenced from the information that you are finding into online environments. So out of 10 purchases happening into physical shops are influenced by previous information that you have collected through some digital channels. This is the classic behavior that we call as ROPO, research online and purchase offline, or also called web roaming. And we see that in some countries, this is even more relevant than in other countries. And we see, just as an example from this BCG Alta Gamma report, that 92% of all consumers are influenced by digital channels, with WeChat ecosystem impacting for 60% of purchases in China. And more broadly speaking, we see that many, so if we look at younger consumers, a significant portion of their own purchases are influenced by some information that they discover into the metaverse. We're going to talk about the metaverse later. It's clear that we're talking about an issue that is still a bit controversial into luxury, but it's at the same time unavoidable to recognize that many luxury brands and fashion brands in general are starting to practice and experience, or better experiment a bit with the metaverse, and are trying to find their ideal approach to get in touch with consumer also through this new point of let's say contact. But it's very evident that digital environments are playing a crucial role in shaping purchase decisions and consumer behavior, even into the fashion luxury field, with even a further, let's say, kind of a trend that goes exactly in the opposite direction. From, let me say, the digital environment that supports the decision making to the physical environment where you are going to take your final purchase decision, to exactly the opposite, let's say, direction, but it's also labeled showrooming, which means that there is a significant portion of consumption decisions that are starting into a physical point of sale, where you enter and you try, you taste, you have a physical experience with the product, but then the final purchase decision, or better, the so-called transaction, is happening into a digital channel. And this is at the moment covering around 10 to 20% of overall purchases into the fashion luxury field. The reasons behind this kind of behavior can be very diverse. It might be that you can find better deals online. It might be that online you can combine together brands from different maisons into a single basket. It might be that you are traveling and you want to have your product home delivered, but notwithstanding what is the reason, it's clear that even this second direction that is labeled showrooming is starting to represent an interesting approach that is deeply impacting on luxury and fashion transactions. So my point here is that notwithstanding, if you go from the online to the offline, or vice versa, from the offline to the online, today, for fashion and luxury brands that are clearly building their own success and their own competitive advantage, thanks to the capability to communicate and deliver to final consumer a well consistent image and DNA associated to their own name, it's getting absolutely crucial to be well integrated and coherent in all the actions and the initiatives that are taken across all the possible touch points that are offered to consumers to get in touch with a single brand ecosystem. So this implies that all fashion and luxury brands are today required to put in place truly omnichannel strategies, being aware that less than 50% of journeys are mono-channels, and most part of the consumer behavior processes are happening in a back and forth process where consumers are keeping moving from the on to the off and vice versa, notwithstanding what is the initial and the final point. But there is a back and forth process that is clearly requiring to create consistent and well-knitted stories that are developing across all the different channels. Not only it's an issue of integration across channels, but also across devices, where by device, I clearly mean the desktop, the laptop, the app that you develop for your own mobile, and more consumers are starting to have in-app experiences, and even IoT, the so-called Internet of Things, if you are providing consumers the chance also to have intelligent objects that are helping to have a more continuous relationship with your own brand. And then there is a further challenge that has to do with being consistent across different platforms. And in this case, I'm mainly focusing on all the different social media platforms that every brand is today required to master in order to build an effective and engaging storytelling with its own consumers. If we think about fashion and luxury brands, it's clear that the first thought goes to Instagram and TikTok, but we know that different countries also play with different social media platforms, that still YouTube might be relevant for some specific goals, while Twitter for some other more informative purposes. So it's clear that no single brand is today betting on one single platform, but the core goal is to build, again, a story that can deploy with different languages that are coherent with the single platform features, but in a well-connected way, and the capability to really build a story that is deploying across the different platforms where brands are present. And it's also very clear that if you simply copy and paste your own presence into one of these platforms, let's say Instagram into TikTok or vice versa, it doesn't work, because each platform has its own language. And to be perceived as authentic, and we're going to see that authenticity is today truly crucial in order to be appreciated and to create a positive impact on your consumer perception, to build your own trustable reputation. If you really want to be perceived as authentic, it's fundamental to develop the right language depending on the single platform that you are using. So translate the core message according to the proper tone of voice that is related to each single platform, but at the same time maintaining a strong fil rouge that is at the core of your own brand DNA. And this fil rouge is today starting to deploy even across different realities, which means from the physical reality to the augmented reality to the virtual reality, going through many degrees of mixed reality that are still typical, characterizing today the interaction between consumers and brands that are starting to deploy their own first experiences across many of these different new areas for interaction with their final audience. So this is just to say that this omni-channel, omni-device, omni-platform, omni-reality environment is clearly becoming a challenge for every brand into any industry, but for brands such as the fashion and luxury ones that deeply build their own DNA, and also the reason that often justifies very high premium price that are clearly related, especially to high-end position brands, this kind of consistency is even more crucial. For every highly symbolic industry, such as fashion and luxury, or the design field as well, it's clear that this is a challenge to develop a very consistent message across all the different touch points is crucial to maintain the reason behind the choice and the preference for a specific brand. This is just, for instance, an example by Louis Vuitton that has absolutely clearly understood the importance of identifying a strong core message. For Louis Vuitton, it is the art of travel, because as probably most part of you are familiar with, Louis Vuitton has its core DNA into the trunk segment, so they are related to the luggage world, and the art of travel is the core claim at the root of the Louis Vuitton positioning. And they have been so capable to translate this specific core message with the proper language characteristic of all the different touch points they have decided to use in order to create a truly engaging relationship with their own consumers. And so they moved from the physical city guides that they have developed and they are selling as a physical book into their own main flagship stores across the world, to some geolocalized apps that are providing tips to travel across the world according to the LV spirit, and a bunch of contests for specific YouTube competition, or suggestion for preparing the best luggage that are going to represent a tutorial for consumers who want to really fully explore their own travel experiences according to the Louis Vuitton spirit. And this is a clear example of capability to well integrate and build and knit a consistent storytelling across all the different touch points and platforms that the brand has decided to use, and eventually even stretch this kind of storytelling across different realities, because this is, I think, a wonderful example of how Louis Vuitton has understood the crucial role that technology can play, not as a potential, let me say, competitor of physical retail, but as a potential enabler or even enhancer of the experience that you can live into the physical store. This is just one small example of an initiative that Louis Vuitton has done right after the pandemic in order to bring back consumers into physical stores. As you probably remember, unfortunately, after being in lockdown for several months, it was kind of a challenge to bring consumers back into physical stores because we were no longer used to stay in very crowded places, and there was still kind of insecurity feeling that was scaring for many consumers. And so what Louis Vuitton has decided to do was to develop an ad hoc concept with some characters from the Zoom with friends leitmotif that they are keeping playing with in augmented reality. And so what they did was to organize this concert in a very specific moment on a very specific day. And they basically invited all consumers to be in front of the physical store, their main flagship store downtown Paris, download a specific app to visualize through their own smartphone the store, the flagship, and assist live to the unique concert organized through augmented reality in order to engage consumers and create a different way to experience the Louis Vuitton brand. And of course, this was to me a wonderful example of how you can use technology not as an option, an alternative to traditional channels like e-commerce versus physical in-store purchase. But in this case, we used, or better, Louis Vuitton used augmented reality to bring people back into the physical store and recreate a new hype in terms of traffic in a moment where it was tough to bring people out of their own apartment. And Louis Vuitton is keeping playing in a very active way with the augmented reality in order to be sure that they can properly engage consumers in the Louis Vuitton spirit. You know that they have done several initiatives in collaboration with Yayoi Kusama, the artist that is playing with these very colorful dots, and they have enhanced the experience in many different places of the world according to this art of travel spirit that I was mentioning before, but augmented and let's say enhanced with the classic feature that is today the iconic signature of Louis Vuitton related to this very famous colorful dot campaign. So it's a way to really recognize that digital technology is playing a role, and luxury consumers are getting more and more familiar with the opportunities emerging from even the more extreme application of digital technologies, but try to find a consistent, smart approach in order to really integrate these new layers, let me say, of virtual reality and augmented reality into the traditional DNA of the brand. This is, to me, the crucial challenge today. How you can benefit from the opportunities created by new technologies in order to create valuable experiences for your own luxury, very sophisticated customers. Starting from the assumption that we have to recognize that consumers are by DNA today more and more omnichannel, even luxury customers. So we need to find a way to rely on technologies and build a truly omnichannel experience to make them feeling more and more engaged across all the different touch points that can bring single consumers in touch with each of their own favorite brands. I think that there are a few different angles that we can take in order to keep offering a very engaging experience for consumers who are getting more and more omnichannel by definition. We probably won't have enough time to cover all these pillars. Of course, if you eventually decide to apply for a master program, we will have the chance to have some specific classes related to each of the bullets that you see into this slide. I just want to quickly touch all these points and then deep dive into a couple of them. I think that might seem a paradox, but in a more global context, where consumers can easily access to the purchase of their favorite products and brands through a click on e-commerce. If you really want to keep bringing consumers into the physical point of sales, you have to play with unique local touch. So you can't rely on a completely standardized format across the entire global landscape, but you need to re-inject some degrees of local, let's say, contextualization to really make your main flagship store a destination place for traveling consumers who is moving across the world. So paradoxically, in a more global context, we need even more to emphasize the local touch, and we can simply play with standardization. A second crucial, let's say, bullet and core pillar I would love to touch is that today, in order to be dreamy in luxury, is no longer enough to be expensive. For sure, especially luxury items are probably going to remain just for a few. So there is an issue related to scarcity, which comes with a high price point. But being expensive per se is no longer enough to be desirable. Consumers today want to move from the search for aspirational items, aspirational because they are simply very expensive, to inspirational brands that are really capable to share values with their own targeted audience. And this is going to change a bit the approach that many brands have to develop with their own markets. It's not just an issue of changing two letters from being aspirational to becoming inspirational. It's an issue of really being able to build a strong community that is gathering together a clear set of values that are characterizing a specific brand that is going to make a difference in terms of impact on final consumer choices. And there is a huge chapter that we might want to touch related to gamification. If we want to engage especially younger generations, we need to be present, and luxury brands as well have to be present in those contexts where consumers are spending a huge portion of their own time. And video games, especially for younger consumers, are clearly playing a major role. So entering video games, developing digital products, so the so-called digital twin, the digital version of your physical product, and eventually even playing with a non-fungible token is representing a new challenge, which requires to develop a completely new language for luxury brands. But again, if you want to get in touch with your consumers, it's not the final consumer who has to learn your own language, but you as a brand have to understand how to learn and speak the same language of your own targeted audience. And if your younger consumers are playing into that field, are developing that specific language, you have to follow them and to understand how to be meaningful to this specific target, entering eventually a video game if you discover that most part of consumers are getting in touch with brands into that context. Customization is representing clearly a crucial new driver for luxury purchases. And it's clear that, again, digital technologies that are enhancing the chance to develop one-to-one interaction with each single consumer are playing a major role in enabling a new venue of opportunities for customizing most part of items, ranging from luxury position brands to super consumer brands. Even H&M is offering some chances for customizing items or has done some experiment in this direction. And finally, as we were mentioning at the beginning of this session with the poll, the very impressive asset that we are all getting more and more familiar with has to do with enhanced analytics and big data. By interacting with consumers in digital environments, it's clear that we are enabling an incredible amount of data that are going to be recorded, that are going to be traced into our own servers. The more we interact with consumers in a truly omnichannel environment, the more consumers are developing, even without being completely aware, but they are leaving traces behind that are super precious for our own brands. It's like if today we are really sitting on a kind of incredible gold mine of data that have no precedent in our history, in our past history. So for marketing people, this is a dream. We never had the chance to get to know so much, so many things about consumers. The crucial challenge today becomes how to take a meaningful pattern out of this data and rely on this data to drive our own business decision, till getting to discover that just by looking at the brands and the single SKUs, so the single products that consumers are more frequently putting into their own wish list together, we can get to influence and adapt our own merchandising decision. And eventually, we're going to decide which products we should put at the entrance of our own store, one close to the other, taking advantage of the items that are more frequently put together in the same basket or in the same wish list by consumers online. And if you think in this perspective, it's a crucial change because we are starting to rely on, let me say, digitally generated information to drive our decision into physical retail. It was typically the way around, right? So in the past, we were used to rely on the experience that we had developed into our own physical point of sale to shape the specific e-commerce shelf and the symbol of the cart that was virtually filled in by consumers. Now we are starting to have a kind of opposite opportunity to rely on digitally generated information, even to shape the decision that we take into the physical context. And these are really challenges that are coming brand new with the opportunities to rely on an incredible amount of data that was not even, let's say, possible to dream into the past.
If you like this video, click the bell icon for more such content.